Welcome back, everyone. I'm excited for our deep dive today. It's into the book of Leviticus.
Leviticus.
Yeah,
Okay.
it doesn't exactly have the reputation of being a page-turner.
Yeah, I can see why some might say that, but I think there's a reason it's stuck around for so long.
Absolutely.
There's
There's so much depth to uncover. And today we're focusing on one of the central themes, the holiness of God.
a powerful concept and absolutely key to understanding not just Leviticus, but the whole biblical story.
Okay, so before we jump into Leviticus specifically, can we zoom out for a second and set the scene for our listeners?
Absolutely. So we're in the Old Testament. Humanity's been separated from God because of sin and rebellion, but God chooses the Israelites to restore that relationship.
And that's where Leviticus picks up.
Exactly. It starts right as God's presence comes to dwell among the Israelites in this portable tent called the tabernacle, right in the middle of their camp.
Wow, what an image. That's incredibly close.
It is, but it also creates a problem.
Wow. How so?
Well, because God is pure holiness.
So to be that close to him? Wouldn't that be dangerous for the Israelites?
Exactly. Think of it this way. God's presence is like the sun.
Oh, okay, I get it.
Essential for life. You need it. But if you get too close,
You get burned.
you get burned.
Ouch.
And in Leviticus, holiness is this pure, powerful presence. It's good, but it's also dangerous.
Okay, so how are the Israelites supposed to live with this intensely holy God
Yeah.
right there in their midst without, being destroyed?
That's what makes Leviticus so fascinating. It basically lays out how they can navigate life alongside God's goodness while also being,
Oh,
well, flawed humans.
makes sense.
Okay.
How does it do that?
Leviticus presents three main solutions: rituals, the priesthood, and purity laws.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. Let's start with rituals. What's the deal with all the animal sacrifices? There are a lot of them.
A lot. It was the main way people in the ancient world interacted with the divine. But here's what sets Leviticus apart. It's less about appeasing an angry God and more about expressing gratitude.
So not just throwing a goat on the altar and hoping for the best.
Nope. It's about acknowledging shortcomings, seeking forgiveness, maintaining that right relationship.
Interesting. So there's a deeper meaning here.
Absolutely. There are sacrifices for giving thanks, for unintentional sins, even for festivals.
Oh, right, the festivals. They're all about remembering key moments in Israel's history,
Yeah.
like their exodus from Egypt.
Exactly. It's a way to connect their present lives back to God's faithfulness.
So the festivals are rituals too.
Got it.
But there's one ritual that always stands out to me. It's right in the center of the book, so it must be important. The Day of Atonement.
Oh, yeah. That's the culmination of the entire ritual system.
Sure.
Once a year, the priest would perform this big ceremony with 2 goats to deal with the unintentional sins of the whole nation.
Okay, 2 goats. Now, I'm really curious, what happened to them?
So 1 goat was sacrificed. Its blood was taken into the Holy of Holies, the most sacred space in the tabernacle, to symbolically atone for the people's sins.
Wow.
And the second goat, the scapegoat, all the confessed sins were placed on it, and it was sent out into the wilderness, carrying those sins away.
That's a powerful visual.
It is. God removing the sins of the community. But did they really believe this ritual cleansed them? That's a good question. Think about the gods in the ancient world.
Often portrayed as unpredictable and easily angered.
Yeah.
So how is the God of Israel different?
That's what's so interesting. He's presented as being deeply affected by human corruption, but also as providing a clear way for his people to know they're forgiven.
The Day of Atonement offered them that tangible assurance of forgiveness. So Leviticus is really quite different from what we often imagine about ancient religions.
Very much so. It's revolutionary. It shows a God who wants to dwell with his people despite their flaws, and he gives them the means to do that.
So these rituals, including the festivals, weren't just empty actions.
Not at all. They were a way for the Israelites to actively participate in their relationship with this holy God.
A God who provided a way for them to be with him despite their imperfections.
Exactly. The rituals are a framework for how a holy God can dwell with flawed people, offering a path towards reconciliation and restoration.
So we've talked about rituals. But what about that second solution? The priesthood. What was their role in all of this?
The priesthood, they're crucial. They bridge the gap between God's holiness and the people.
Because remember, direct contact with that holiness was dangerous.
Right, like we said, getting too close to the sun. So the priests were like intermediaries.
Exactly. Represented the people before God. It sounds like a huge responsibility.
It was, and there were specific qualifications to become a priest.
Like what?
Well, there are whole sections in Leviticus that outline the ordination process, the
Yeah.
training, and the really high standards of conduct expected of priests.
It makes sense. You can't just have anyone going into the presence of a holy God.
Nope. They had to maintain a heightened level of purity and holiness themselves because of that constant interaction with the divine.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got rituals in the priesthood. What about the third solution for approaching God's holiness? The purity laws.
Ah, yes. The purity laws.
I have to admit, this is the part of Leviticus that I always struggle with. It seems like such a random assortment of things. Clean and unclean animals, skin diseases, bodily fluids, even guidelines for relationships and sexuality. What does all of that have to do with holiness?
Well, at the core of it all, it's about ritual purity.
Ritual purity.
Being in a state that allows you to be near God's presence. Being ritually impure meant you needed to take steps to be cleansed before you could approach the sacred.
So it's not about morality in the way we usually think of it.
Yeah.
More like a state of being.
Got it. Being ritually impure wasn't necessarily sinful, it was a temporary state, and it could be remedied through specific actions like wading bathing or offering a sacrifice.
So the point was to recognize that God's holiness requires a certain level of separation from things considered impure.
Exactly.
Okay, that helps. But there's so many different categories of purity laws. Can we unpack those a little? You mentioned clean and unclean animals. What was the thinking behind that distinction?
That's a good question. The reasoning isn't always super clear. The list is divided by habitat: land, sea, air. And some animals in each category are deemed pure and others impure. This is a bit of a head-scratcher. But it does seem like the purity of the animal was connected to a sense of wholeness, completeness.
Okay, so like pure animals often possessed characteristics that were seen as ideal, like chewing the cud and having cloven hooves.
Right, so the physical characteristics were somehow imbued with a spiritual or symbolic meaning.
And don't forget, these food laws also set the Israelites apart from the surrounding nations. It was a constant reminder that their relationship with God, their God, should permeate every aspect of their lives, even down to what they ate. It's powerful. Their faith wasn't just about internal beliefs. It was about living a distinctive way of life, reflecting their unique relationship with God.
Yes, it was about embodying their faith in a tangible way.
What about the laws concerning skin diseases, bodily fluids, and touching dead bodies? Those are even more perplexing.
Yeah, those can be tough to wrap your head around. But they likely stem from the Israelites' understanding of life and death as sacred.
Okay, because God is the author of life.
Exactly. So anything associated with death, like touching a dead body or experiencing bodily discharges, was seen as ritually defiling, requiring a period of separation and cleansing.
It wasn't about fear or disgust, but about acknowledging the profound nature of life and death and how those things connect to God's holiness.
Exactly. It was about understanding the power and sanctity of life given by God and maintaining a certain level of separation from things that represented its opposite.
Okay, so then there's this other category of purity laws related to social justice, healthy relationships, and sexual integrity. Those seem to be more about morality than ritual purity.
It's true they have a strong ethical component, but remember, the overarching goal of Leviticus is to guide the Israelites in reflecting God's holiness in every aspect of their lives.
So moral purity goes hand in hand with ritual purity.
Precisely. By upholding justice, treating others with respect, and living with sexual integrity, they were striving to mirror God's moral character, to become a people worthy of dwelling in his presence.
It's like they were creating a holistic reflection of God's holiness, from their rituals and daily practices to their interactions with each other and the world around them.
That's a great way to put it. It was a comprehensive vision of holiness, encompassing both ritual actions and ethical behavior.
This is really changing how I view Leviticus. It's not just a set of arbitrary rules. It's a blueprint for living a life that honors God and reflects his character, both in our actions and in how we relate to each other.
You're getting it. And while these laws were given to the Israelites in their specific historical context, I think the underlying principles still resonate with us today.
Yeah, I can see that. Even though we may not follow these specific laws, the idea of striving for purity, both ritually and morally, and recognizing the power of a holy presence are still concepts worth exploring in our modern lives.
Absolutely. It's a call to examine how we approach God, how we live our lives, and how we interact with the world around us.
It's really amazing how relevant these ancient practices still feel.
Right. And how intentional the Israelites were in their relationship with God.
It wasn't just a casual belief system. It was woven into every aspect of their lives.
Exactly. The rituals, the priesthood, the purity laws, They all point to a deliberate effort to live in constant awareness of God's presence and his holiness.
Which is so different from how we often approach faith today.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like we try to compartmentalize our faith, keep it separate from our daily lives.
But Leviticus shows us a much more integrated approach.
Definitely. It makes you wonder what we can learn from the Israelites.
Their attentiveness to ritual purity, their commitment to embodying their faith in such a tangible way.
Even though we don't live under the same system of laws, those underlying principles of reverence and respect for God, they still apply.
Right. It's not about the specific rituals. It's about recognizing the need to approach God with a sense of awe and humility.
And maybe that sense of striving for purity, while it might not be about ritual cleansing in the same way, it still resonates in our personal lives.
How so?
Well, think about the choices we make every day, what we eat, how we treat our bodies, the media we consume, the relationships we cultivate.
You're saying those choices can be seen as a modern-day pursuit of purity.
In a way, yes, aligning ourselves with what we believe is good and life-giving.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. It's like Leviticus is challenging us to consider how our actions,
Yeah.
big and small,
Yeah.
reflect our understanding of God and our desire to honor him.
Exactly. It's not just about outward appearances or blindly following rules.
Yeah.
It's about an inward transformation.
Becoming more like the God we worship.
Yes. Allowing his holiness to shape our hearts and minds and actions.
It's a journey.
It is a lifelong process of seeking alignment with the divine, of reflecting God's character in all that we do.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into Leviticus.
Yeah.
It's really challenged me to look at this book with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
And to think about how these ancient principles can inform my own life.
I'm so glad. It's amazing how these ancient texts can still speak to us today.
They really can. And to our listeners out there, we hope this conversation has sparked some new insights for you as well.
And maybe even inspired you to keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into the scriptures.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.